Hate crimes are a problem in California. The Act Against Hate Alliance, or AAHA, is searching for a solution. The organization formed in response to a rising number of hate crime attacks. The state attorney general says those numbers are up. Although this is a California problem, hate crimes are not confined to one state, area, or country. This is why the AAHA turned to international experts during a forum held in May. Tomas Barretz is the general manager of the International Network Against Cyber Hate based in the Netherlands.
Educational programs from a very, very early stage about digital media literacy and education about, hate speech and discrimination in general would be extremely important, I think, especially in the parts of Europe where I am from.
The solution from Barretz found support from Maria Daniela Maruda. Professor Maruda represents the country of Greece and currently serves as the chair of the European Commission Against Racism and Intolerance.
Building trust with institutions such as the police requires the police to be reflective of society. So opening up police officers so that they would have a proportion of all members of society, everybody would feel much at ease to report an incident. And then legislation that will protect victims that decide to report.
Solutions to the problem of hate crimes in California may require a fundamental shift in public policy and a new approach. That's the opinion of Dennis Santiago, Chief Operating Officer for the National Diversity Coalition.
I would like to see a cultural shift in terms of public policy by all groups that participate in it to take more time to look at the argument in the alternative for their ground rules and assumptions and question whether or not their views are in fact the right views to move forward with.
Reducing or even ending hate crimes in California will require the work of many. There is no one solution. That's the opinion of Laura E. Ellsworth. She is a partner in charge of global community service initiatives at Jones Day, a multinational law firm headquartered in Cleveland, Ohio.
Every single person, regardless of where you live, regardless of your profession, finds a way to understand what your role is in solving this problem, because no one thing will ever solve it, but it is solvable if every single person steps up and becomes a part of the solution.
Fiona Ma is the state treasurer in California. She supports the efforts of AAHA. Ma was born and raised in Northern California. She's been a witness to crimes of hate committed in her own community and very much wants to find a solution.
When we know publicly that there is someone who is out there that is attacking someone on the streets of San Francisco, we can alert each other and we can be more vigilant.
The core mission of the Act Against Hate Alliance is to identify the root causes behind hate crimes and propose solutions to stop them. It is made possible through funding from the California State Library Stop the Hate Initiative. The organization was co-founded by former California State Senate Minority Leader Bob Huff and May Ho Huff.
Good morning, everybody. I'm former State Senator Bob Huff, and I am the Act Against Hate Alliance MC today. You just saw a program that was put together by Bill Bird, our communications director, and Ronnie Chung, our technical director. Today's briefing is the 10th in a series of monthly media briefings hosted by Act Against Hate Alliance. I'd like to turn the microphone over to my wife, May, for some opening remarks.
Thank you, Bob. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending our briefing today. Act Against Hate Alliance was founded in 2022 to focus on finding and implementing solutions against hate crimes. The academic environment is often considered to be ground zero for students developing social skills, learning to interact with peers in a respectful way, and ideally rising to their fullest potential in an environment that is positive, is embracing of differences, and open to diversity in all its forms. Some students have parents who teach this. Sadly, many do not. Therefore, curriculum taught in school and after school, as well as organized activities outside the classroom, are immensely important to construct the building blocks of mental health, appropriate attitudes, language, and behavior. Students are regularly described as the leaders of tomorrow, but some can and are choosing to step into leadership roles today at both the high school and university levels, promoting change at a critical time when outcomes can be favorably impacted and unity and inclusion can be fostered. Today's program will include a conversation with emerging high school and university student leaders who are active in their own communities and or institutions, as well as the actions that some of them are taking. Bob, back to you.
Thank you, Maymay. In addition to the students Maymay mentioned, we will hear from actress Chase Masterson, who was herself bullied when she attended school. Bullying behavior demonstrates a high level of intolerance of others and is often the precursor to hate crimes and hate incidents. As an adult, Chase is engaged in helping address the root causes of bullying and hate through after-school activities and programming. For those of you used to our normal program format today, we'll deviate a bit, excuse me, to interact better with our large student panel. Chase will be our first speaker, followed by short, brief introductions from our students, followed by a roundtable discussion. To our media friends, please log your name, organization, and email address in the chat so we can send you follow-up material related to today's program. You can post any questions you have in the chat, and we'll hopefully have time, I'll try to make time, for us to ask those at the end. Please address any chat to everyone, not specifically to me or Maymay. Our first speaker is Chase Masterson. Chase is known worldwide for her work on Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, The Flash, General Hospital, ER, sci-fi entertainment, and leads in features such as The Baby Pact and Yesterday Was a Lie. But Chase is most proud of the work she does as founder and CEO of Pop Culture Hero Coalition, a 501c3 teaching mental health skills to children and teens, with an emphasis on creating inclusion and ending hate. The coalition's heroic journey mental health was created in partnership with YMCA of the USA, and Chase has spoken about coalition's work at Google headquarters, the United Nations, UNESCO, World Anti-Bullying Forum, International Bullying Prevention Association, TEDx Vienna, the Association for Contextual Behavior Science, and at pop culture conventions worldwide. Chase, thanks for taking time from your schedule to join us today. Make sure you unmute your mic.
Okay, I have done this before, I promise. I'm sorry about that. Thank you so much, Senator and Maymay Huff. I truly appreciate this opportunity. As we've mentioned, the rates of bullying are staggering. In all its forms, bullying has been a devastating occurrence for so many children and adults. Bullying takes place with schoolyard bullying, cyberbullying, LGBTQIA+ bullying, racism, and other forms of inequity. And I am here today because I am devoting my life to ending hate in all its forms, because I could have been one of those statistics. I come to this work having survived explicit threats of violence to myself and my son. And this led to an extremely dark period, in which I was extremely depressed and which thoughts of suicide could have ended my life. Thankfully, I learned mental health tools, and I am now dedicated to making sure that other people can learn those tools, particularly while they're still young. Hurt people, and healed people heal people. And lack of mental health is directly related to these surges of violence against others and surges of violence against oneself. Let's take a look at some of the facts and the statistics. The American Academy of Pediatrics, the Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and the Children's Hospital Association have joined together to declare a national emergency in children's mental health. As Dr. Vivek Murthy, Surgeon General of the US, said, This is a critical issue we have to do something about now. Emergency visits for suspected suicide attempts increased by 51% for girls during the pandemic and 4% for adolescent boys. Even before COVID, the rates were staggering. 1 in 5 children had a mental health disorder, and the statistics are even higher now. Only 20% of kids and adults with mental health disorders receive care. Those who've considered attempting suicide rose from 13.8% to 18.8%. The statistics are even higher for BIPOC youth in crisis. For Black, Indigenous people of color, 36% of students said that they had experienced racism before or during the pandemic, and this includes 55% of Black students and 64% of Asian students. I personally know families from Asian cultures who have been afraid to leave the house, even afraid to go to the grocery store for fear of being attacked because of misinformation on COVID. This, of course, in young people equates to poor mental health in every area, including poor academic performance and lifelong risk behaviors such as drugs, alcohol, and self-harm. The risks are even higher for LGBTQIA plus children and teens and adults. And as we've seen in several states, the rate of harassment and the lack of inclusion is horrifying and has led to extremely huge challenges in mental health. As you can see, 42% of LGBTQ youth seriously considered attempting suicide in the last year. I can get these statistics and this slide presentation to anyone who'd like to see it after. But high school students who identify as LGBTQ are more than 4 times likely to have attempted suicide as their heterosexual peers. One thing I really stand firmly for is that we can't say we should be included and have anyone else be excluded. Inclusion means everyone. Ending hate means ending hate for everyone. Dr. Vivek Murthy, Surgeon General, associates this mental health crisis with the difficulties of social media. Children and teens and adults have so much pressure to get likes and to be liked and to be applauded on social media. And that's really a level of performance that human beings were never built to have to stand up to. So when our worth is seen as only our social media presence and the number of followers we have, which is how a lot of students see it, there's a real problem in this country. As we all know, gun violence has been horrific, just taking place at all-time highs. Climate change and the fear of what's going to happen is also stressing young people. The upheavals of racism and social conflict have also been extremely intense. And this also leads to the fact that children just don't feel good enough with fears about the future, and especially, as I've mentioned, fears from social media. There's a real crisis in how kids see themselves these days. Every hero has an origin story, and so I'd like to tell you about my origin story with the coalition's work and how the heroic journey was formed. I personally had, as I mentioned briefly, a horrific incident of stalking through a fan of Star Trek, and I was in a really terrible period of time. And a friend of mine said, if you want to feel better, go help someone who has it worse than you. Well, I know a lot of people have it worse than me, but I couldn't think of anyone who was actually angrier than me, except possibly ex-gang members. So I went downtown to Homeboy Industries, which is the largest prevention program for gang membership in the world. And I started working with these kids. Homeboy Industries is where nothing stops a bullet like a job. These are the most dreaded outcasts of society. These are the people who no one wants to run into and no one has taken real time to understand. In my experience, these kids were born in the wrong zip code and they did what they could to survive. And a lot of times, very unfortunately, that involves joining a gang. Kids like Marco. I met Marco when he was like this, hardened, cold, scared. And Marco, very fortunately, has turned into someone who heals people and who works to help other people get out of gangs. It's amazing the transformation that takes place at Homeboy Industries. I worked with these kids starting in 2008, and I still am involved on various levels to help get their kids into summer camp and other things that can help them heal and become functioning, productive members of society. This picture that you're looking at involves people from 3 rival gangs. These kids would have formerly killed each other for fun, and now they're working together. They become like brothers and sisters, and they get their lives together. At Homeboy, we say we're not only their last chance, we're also their first chance. This healing takes place in every single person who walks through that door. The amazing feeling of camaraderie and brotherhood and sisterhood is evident the minute you walk in the door. This is Vance. I call him Ad Vance. He was head of the Crips, both outside and inside Folsom State Prison. I never asked them what they did in order to get into prison, but I asked them what got them involved in their life of pain. And every single one of them, including Vance, told me we got bullied, jumped in to joining gangs. They were afraid not to. Well, I thought about these dynamics, and I thought of the reason that I was there, because of oppression and fear. And I, at the same time, I was going to Star Trek conventions on the weekends. So I would go to Star Trek conventions and we would celebrate these fictional battles with space epic fictional bullets flying. And then I'd go to Homeboy and work with the kids who lived in neighborhoods where there were real bullets flying. And I decided I had to do something to help. Around that time, here's a couple more. Around that time, I heard about a little girl named Katie who was bullied for bringing her Star Wars lunchbox to school. Katie said all the boys were following her around and saying, "You can't like Star Wars, you're a girl." Well, we know better than that, don't we, ladies? Katie went home and cried to her mom, Carrie Goldman. She said she didn't want to carry her Star Wars lunchbox anymore. She was just going to conform and carry her pink lunchbox. Carrie's mother is a wonderful writer, and she put out this out there on her blog. And she said, if anybody out there has been bullied, particularly regarding gender or particularly at school, if you could say a few words to my daughter, Katie, of encouragement, I would appreciate it. Huffington Post picked up Carrie's blog, and thousands of people saw it, and hundreds of us responded. I was one of them. And so I said to Katie what everyone else was saying, and what we're saying here today: you get to be you. Who you are is beautiful, and no one has a right to oppress you or tell you otherwise. Katie understood and was very happy and kept her Star Wars lunchbox. And she was actually even able to encourage other little girls to be who they are and to love Star Wars and to love gender nonconforming things and to realize their strength as little girls and women. I was able to introduce Katie through my Star Wars and Star Trek connections to the man who played Chewbacca. So now the little girl who was bullied in first grade for loving Star Wars is friends with the real Chewbacca, who unfortunately is no longer with us. But there we go. We can each do everything that we can to make this world a better place. And sometimes that's just friendship. Carrie decided to write a book. This is Katie's mother. And HarperCollins picked up the book. And she interviewed me, she interviewed Peter Mayhew, who played Chewbacca, and a lot of other people. And she did a huge amount of research on this subject. She asked me to get her book into Comic-Con, and that's when I said, yes, but let's do something more. I just used the tools that I had at hand. And I want to interject and say, I truly appreciate what you said, what you included on Susan Elworth's comment in the introduction. All of us have a place here. And all of us have a place in ending hate. And I was grateful to be able to use the tools and contexts that I had in order to be a part of this movement. And I want you all to consider the contacts and abilities that you have as well. So one of those contacts that I had was Comic-Con. We brought to Comic-Con the United Nations Association of San Diego. And throughout the years, we have brought the Obama Foundation, the United Nations proper, Amnesty International, the No Hate Campaign, the ACLU, Moms Rising, and many other organizations that have come together to end hate. and to create inclusion and social justice. We teach kids to become heroes over hate, superheroes in real life. One of our first events to speak at in schools, so in 2015, we began creating a curriculum to bring into schools, and that is the heroic journey. One of our first school events to speak at was unfortunately after a huge hate crime incident. It was after the largest shooting in U.S. history at that time. It's no longer the largest shooting, mass shooting, but it was at that time, and it was in San Bernardino. And it took place about a mile from an elementary school. These kids heard the shots and were traumatized. The entire school was on lockdown, as we've seen so many schools heartbreakingly on lockdown due to gun violence. These kids were traumatized, and bullying increased. Kids were mean to each other because they couldn't stand the pain that they had inside. And isn't that what we see in society? People give what they have to give. And when they have hate and a lack of understanding about inclusion inside, that's all they have to give. So this school was really having an incredible increase in bullying incidents. And we went there with our psychologists, Dr. Janina Scarlett and Dr. Andrea Letamendi. We have a much bigger team now, but at that point we had these two, and we brought them, and they helped the kids. As you'll see, they helped the kids with superhero narratives, where Batman was a young boy, and he experienced a hate crime. He experienced his parents being killed right in front of him because they had money and they were mugged and shot. And so we learned that, like Batman, we can make our lives better instead of worse. When we are confronted with hate, we can choose to make the right decisions based on our core values, and we can stop the hate there. We can end the hate and proceed with teaching love and healing out of our experiences. So after that, we became the mental health program for YMCA of the USA nationwide. We're not in every Y yet, but if you walk into any YMCA in the country, if they have a mental health program for children and parents, it's ours. It's the heroic journey. And I'm extremely proud of that. We've been in 14 locations in Los Angeles and several other in California. We also have an outreach to LGBTQIA+ youth because, as we said, everyone gets to be who they are. No one has a right to say otherwise. And people say we're saving lives. We have an emotional support toolkit that goes out into schools and YMCAs, and I would be very happy to tell anyone who wants to know more about this. It's a 33 lesson plan program, and it starts with teaching healthy identity, self-compassion, mindfulness, how to handle our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And then it goes on to teach conflict resolution and healthy tools to get through life, which are extremely important for children to learn at a young age. So we have this program, which also is at home. There are some free tools, there are some free tools available on our website. That's popculturehero.org. I'll give that later as well. And these are just some of the tools that we teach: identity development, mindfulness, self-compassion, so that we can be as kind to ourselves as we are to other people, so that we can stop those critical voices and have peace inside. And so then we can give out peace to the world. Resilience, empathy, and compassion. Thank you so much for allowing me to share today. I'm grateful for all of the work that the coalition is doing, and I'm grateful for the ways that the heroic journey is changing children's lives. I'll put my email address and our web address in the chat, and I welcome any questions or ideas or thoughts that you all might have. Thank you so much again to Senator and May Huff.
Thank you, Chase, for sharing with us. You have certainly been engaged in impactful programs. We appreciate you taking personal commitment and time to help solve these thorny little issues that we struggle with in society, particularly along hate and bullying. So I've asked Chase to stick around and answer any questions that you might have at the conclusion of the program. If something else pops up, I've warned her during the next session, I may drag her in and ask her to say something. It's going to be flowing organically, so I don't know how that's going to happen. But Chase, again, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
I'm going to now ask our student panel to unmute their mics in order and take a few moments to introduce themselves, including the school they're attending, grade level, any other important background. Keep it under a minute. Now let's go in this order. We'll have Utkarsh first, followed by Haley, Nicholas, Remy, and then Aiden. Okay, Utkarsh, you're up.
Bob, for the introduction. My name is Utkarsh Jain. I'm a current third-year student, a junior at the University of California at Berkeley. I've been involved in many different organizations, mainly political on campus as well as on the county level and state level, and have been doing a lot to impact the community and helping candidates to make sure that these candidates are really helping their community and addressing the issues that really matter in each and in their respective areas. As well as been working in several other areas of business and finance as well, helping local businesses get what they need, get what they need in terms of their financial needs, as well as advising many businesses on campuses through consulting and other various programs. Thank you, Bob.
Yep. Thank you, Utkarsh. Haley, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Haley Wells. I'm a junior at Sacred Heart Prep, and I'm involved in a local political youth group of college and high school students. And at my school specifically, I am the leader of the Current Events Club and the First Amendment Club that tries to help get kids involved in speaking their views without hate.
Awesome. Thank you, Haley. Nicholas?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicholas Hernandez. I'm a rising sophomore at California State University, Fullerton. I've been involved in a variety of political campaigns at the local, state, and federal levels. I'm also heavily involved in nonprofit work with various organizations, including Rotary International, the World Affairs Council of America, and a nonprofit that I founded in high school to get students more civically engaged. In addition to that, I've served as a city commissioner in my hometown of Walnut, and I currently serve on the Mayor's Advisory Committee in Walnut as well. And throughout these various levels of government and private sector roles that I've been involved in, I've seen firsthand the detriments of hate and discrimination. So I really commend Senator and Mrs. Huff for this initiative, and I look forward to discussing and sharing my perspective as a student.
Thank you, Nicholas. Remy?
Hello, my name is Remy, and I just graduated from Sunny Hills High School in Fullerton, and I am an incoming freshman at Princeton University. Now, I personally do not have any prior experience when it comes to this sort of field. I'm more of a STEM-oriented student, but I look forward to discussing this whole subject with you guys, and I'm honored to be here.
So just to put this in perspective before Aiden comes on, Remy was valedictorian of her high school, and she got a full ride scholarship to Remy, and she specializes in STEM, to put a little context on it. So while you haven't been engaged, we certainly appreciate your thoughtful analysis, which hopefully we'll be able to listen to during the presentations. Aiden?
Yeah, thank you, guys. I've been organizing high school activities, founding our chapter of Act Against Hate Alliance in Flint Ridge Prep. I'm a rising senior at Flint Ridge Prep, and I also serve in a capacity of nonpartisan, partisan, and nonprofit roles as chairman of the Los Angeles County Taxpayers Association, as a consultant on a couple of political campaigns, and also as a field coordinator. So while out in the field campaigning, while in meetings with business groups and political groups of all different stripes, I've seen the effects of hate, the effects of division, and that's something that my goal is to mend, and I've been working with people on all sides. So I would like to commend Senator Bob Huff and May for leading the charge here.
Thank you, Aiden, and welcome to all of you. You're all impressive. You have some exceptional backgrounds. Some of you are engaged now, some are not, but that gives us hopefully a little broader perspective as we dig into this issue. So by way of how we're going to do this, rather than do the electronic hand raising, and I talked to you all about this in a previous sort of orientation call, but just hold your hand up and I'll see you and call on you. I think it'll go a little bit quicker. If I call on somebody else first, I'll try to get to you. Be patient. If you really want to say something, jump up and down or something and get my attention. But my hope is to create a dialogue that helps our audience see these issues through your eyes, through your life experiences, because we all come from different spots, different families, different religious upbringings, if any, different political backgrounds, different communities. And as we've all seen, you come from different schools and locations. So there's no right or wrong answers. We're not going to judge you by something that you say. We're just trying to get an insight into how this little bandwidth of students looks at things from your perspective and shares with us. So the first question, have you or someone you know personally experienced bullying, hate incidents, or hate speech? And if so, could you briefly share the experience? Haley?
Well, for me, in middle school, especially during COVID, with the effects of social media being so polarizing between views, a lot of people would put polls on their social media and they would ask you a question. And for me, I'd always skip over them because I did not want people to get mad at me for the answer I put. And then I would get attacked and I'd get a lot of messages sent to me saying, please answer right now, we're going to block you. And then if I put the answer they didn't like, they would get really upset and tell everyone about that. So going on to high school, since I saw the effects of like people not being able to say their views with peace, I tried to start the current events club. And even there's a lot of hesitation and worry about what you say and people being upset with you because there's not a lot of openness to like say your beliefs. So I've seen that with my friends and myself.
Yeah, it's funny, particularly I've noticed that some people that you know, want to be the most inclusive tend to be the most exclusive. If you don't agree with their version of inclusiveness, you know, you're not a good person yourself or something. Aiden, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think just you know, bringing back that point of people trying to say they're inclusive but end up being exclusive. I think for a lot of us students on this panel, we see being actively engaged in politics. We see that when there are people who disagree with us, they resort to name calling. And I think the fact that a lot of the times for our political beliefs were dehumanized, rationalized into a this phobic or that is group, and using labels to name people instead of looking at their personal attributes and just focusing on politics or divisive rhetoric is something that is extremely concerning, because that starts at a very young age. That starts in middle school, that starts in high school. Sometimes teachers resort to it. And there's a large gap of dialogue, especially in schools right now, because a lot of students and teachers resort to groupthink. And I think the groupthink is very dangerous here because it stifles any freedom of expression, any freedom of speech. And that's where we're going to find the most concern, because the hate comes from a lack of dialogue. The hate comes from the lack of communication between different groups. And that comes from a rhetoric which is quote unquote inclusive, quote unquote, you know, diverse. However, a lot of the times that's blocked off by just a blind hatred for a certain group or another. And I think the fact that people are afraid to communicate with each other just because they have a preconceived notion of someone is what is extremely concerning in today's divisive political atmosphere.
Thank you. Nicholas?
Well, to share of an issue in which people have been discriminated against, I remember when I was in high school, there was a political club that was founded, and this club pertained to a certain political party. And the school administration came in and told the leaders of this club that they have to have an inclusive club. They can't only have it pertain to one political party, and it must just be renamed to political club rather than one about this party, which was the Young Republicans Club. It can't be called that. And I think, you know, it goes back to what Aiden had mentioned about having a rhetoric of inclusivity. However, when there's certain people or groups with beliefs that don't align with the beliefs of those in charge, you know, there's an issue there. And a lot of times people will speak about diversity being one of the most important things, and it is one of the most important things, but diversity doesn't only pertain to being diverse in race or ethnicity, but also diversity in ideas. And it's equally important to have a difference in ideas, to have an open dialogue, to be able to share your own views, and not be worried about being discriminated against or blocked out by other groups solely because of your views. And regardless of what the political affiliation might be, it's still important to be able to have the opportunity to practice your First Amendment right, to share your views with other people, again, to not be discriminated against.
Thank you. Any other comments on that subject? Okay, it's just my view. I don't see Utkarsh up at the top anymore, but I'm guessing you're still here. Let's move on to the second question then. How do you think bullying, hate incidents, and hate speech impact individuals and communities? I mean, it's just words, right? Sticks and stones can break my bones and all that stuff. Words will never harm me. You learned that as a child, didn't you? Do you believe that?
Utkarsh has his hand up.
Okay, I can't. There we go. Now I see you. Yeah, Utkarsh, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think I wanted to address the previous question a little bit, Bob, and address this first as well. You know, coming from a campus as UC Berkeley, where everything is pretty politically active, I would agree with what Aiden and Nick had to say about, you know, the differences in political views being a major issue in terms of discrimination. I think a lot of cultural discrimination also happens on campuses all across the country. And I'm reminded of instance where, you know, two groups had disagreements on national origin. And so the entire administration decided to invest funds from all groups that were against this particular country and movement and then move it to another group. And as a result, it was active and blatant discrimination against this particular group of national origin. And so I think coming to your current question, it really impacts these communities a lot because they're viewed as inferior in their minds or having to do less with what they do and how they impact their community. So I think their visibility and their impact is quite minimized and people don't take them as seriously as they should be. And that impacts all of us as a whole because these certain actions are not able to be seen by the rest of the community and they're not recognized. And so people feel like they have no voice as a result. And I see that on campus every day with students coming to me and saying, hey, you know, I'm unable to express a certain view or I can't talk about a certain issue because my friends will boycott me or a professor will think that grade because I express a certain viewpoint. So it's not just on happening on campuses, but, you know, outside of campus and outside of these college towns, we see that many of these minority communities are being impacted because, quite frankly, their achievements and their ideas are not recognized as much as they should be. So it hurts them overall, and I think they feel that they're not part of the entire American ethos that I think we are all promised in this country.
Hey, Utkarsh, just a little comment. Your volume is not, I mean, your audio is breaking up. So I don't know if you have any hardwired thing you can put in or not, or we'll just listen very hard and try to catch what you're saying. Any other answers on that, Remy?
Yeah, so this kind of addresses both questions. So I feel like, yes, words do hurt. I do know people who are able to just disregard what people say about them, but that's not a skill that all of us have. For instance, I, as a former Sunny Hills student, Sunny Hills is primarily an Asian community. And I remember this one particular instance in which one of my friends was discussing, we were discussing different, I guess, ethnic backgrounds. And she started talking about how annoying white people were. And one of my other friends, I was the only white person at this table while we were discussing. And she mentioned that, well, Remy is white. And that other person who was talking about how annoying white people were just said that, oh, Remy's okay because she's half Asian, because I'm half Indonesian. And I just felt it was a little hurtful, not because she said, oh, she's okay, she's half Asian or whatever, but it was particularly because she was focused on the race rather than my actual personality. Like, I'm not okay because I'm a good friend, because my personality, I try my best to, you know, understand other people and discuss with other people. And I'm not saying this just to be like, oh, white people are bullied too. Like, I think this whole issue extends to everyone. There seems to be hate among every community, and I think that it's important that we focus on how this affects everyone rather than I guess certain groups. And I know that other groups experience a lot worse than others, but that was just a personal experience that I had.
Thank you for sharing that. Each of your experiences is a little bit different, but as you look at them collectively, and by the way, if anybody else wants to answer on that, hold your hand up. But as you look at your experiences collectively, and it's mostly going to be in high school, I don't know, when I was in college, I was too busy to even notice other people, but I'm sure it's different now. Utkarsh seems to have a lot of time to get, organized and do things in the community. But are there specific types? I mean, what would be the highest incident? Would that be bullying? Is it hate speech? Is it social media? Is the vehicle? I mean, how does that play out? Where do you see it the most? Haley.
I feel like everything starts with social media because I feel like everyone's either on one side of social media or the other. So we don't know what other people are seeing in their experiences on social media. So you might only see one political side or the other. And then with that, I think in schools or like in the environment, people aren't open to hearing what you have to say. And then from there, they'll call you names. I feel like name calling is the thing I've like heard most or seen happen to other people most. Just name calling, and then a lot of like talking behind like your back. Nothing's ever said to you, so you can't discuss it. You only hear it about you or later on. So there's not a lot of discussion. So I think that drives the hate even more when there's no civil discussion about what's going on or why they disagree with you. And there's not a lot of room for disagreement anymore. It's just like there's just room for like hating on each other instead of debating or talking it out.
So just a follow-up question on that, was that part of your motivation to create this current events club or whatever that you did to create a forum to have this dialogue?
Yes, that was my main like reason for doing it, was because I was hearing things being said about me or things that people were like disagreeing with about me, but they're not saying it to me. They just talk about me in general, and that happened to a lot of my friends as well. So I wanted to create this as a space where people of both political ideologies and just from every background can come together and talk civilly and without like hating on each other just because of those beliefs, where they can learn from each other. Because the only way I feel like society can grow is through learning from one another and having these discussions.
Excellent, thank you. Any other comments on that? Yeah, Utkarsh.
Yeah, I would say I think I agree with what Haley said. All that definitely does happen in terms of what I look at on campus. But I think since I've been involved with the community as well and worked on several campaigns as well, I've seen more extreme forms of harassment and different types of what you would consider hate. I've had tables flipped over when tabling for certain issues or for certain candidates because someone just didn't agree. Or they just had some kind of preconceived notion of what this candidate might believe in. And so they just walk up and flip the table. And, that results in injuries, right, for the people that are tabling at that table. But more often it shows you that, as you said, Senator Huff, the people that preach the most inclusiveness are tend to be the most intolerant. So they engage in these different types of acts of flipping tables and, throwing milkshakes on people's faces and punching people and engaging in violence, and so I think it's really pivotal that we address this kind of hate happening in these communities, and it's not just in campuses, but even in minority communities when a certain minority candidate or person expresses a viewpoint that tends to sway different from what that minority group is conceived to believe in. They could harass too in coffee shops and fast food places anywhere. And then all that stuff goes on social media and they get viral, and the reputation of that person or people involved is ruined. And so I think we need to be vigilant of that and be mindful of how we engage with people and what we're saying to people, and not engaging in this type of speech or violence going forward and accepting people for who they are and what they believe in, even if they differ from us. So.
Aiden, I'm sorry, I had you blocked. I couldn't see your hand.
No problem. Yeah, so I mean, that totally makes sense. And there's a lot of double standards here that we face every single day for the political beliefs that we have versus the political beliefs of people on the other side. I think when you look at the echo chambers that are created, that's extremely toxic and dangerous because you have echo chambers and your beliefs just keep getting fueled and you become more polarized. But also, you know, again, in the name of tolerance and diversity, a lot of speech is shut down. A lot of groups are shut down. And I think that's extremely concerning because in my own city, this is a personal experience. We had a very famous Jewish conservative commentator, radio host, and he was speaking in our city, La Cañada, and he's a very famous, you know, high-profile guy who happened to be Jewish, and he was speaking at the Chabad, which is the Jewish community center, and he was run out of town. He lives in the town, but he was run out of the town from that event for being quote unquote anti-Semitic. So he was run out in the name of tolerance, but then again, he just wanted to represent his community. So I think a lot of the times we mean well for our communities and we try to represent our communities. Same thing on the issues of, you know, educational tolerance with meritocracy. That's a big issue right now, and getting into schools for Asian Americans especially. That's a form of hate that we see all the time in terms of affirmative action. But, you know, in terms of just in general, representing our communities comes with the risk of being labeled as someone that's hating on other communities. And I think we have to be very careful with the labels here, because a lot of the times in my personal experience, there are labels that come that are extremely hurtful, even though we mean well. And those labels are often tossed out unwittingly in the form of diversity, equity, or inclusion, or in the pretext of that.
So what do you students think is the motivation behind this, whether it's social media or it's throwing over tables that have some political message that you disagree with, or, you know, the different things we've talked about? What's the motivation behind that? Yeah, Nicholas?
Well, going back to what Haley spoke about previously, that social media is where everything begins. Coming from the California State University system, the CSU system, it's the largest university system in the country with nearly 500,000 students and tens of thousands of faculty. So social media and the internet is the only way that, it's frankly the best way that people can stay connected, you know, to manage their on-campus organizations, their classes, etc. And a lot of times people resort to that to state their opinions, you know, through different organizations. And it's easy for people to hide behind a screen and, you know, criticize other people, criticize other groups, and not face any repercussions because they're not doing it in person, they're doing it behind a screen. And that's one of the biggest issues where hate is spread through social media. You know, there's a lot of instances where organizations will post on their social media that another organization is going to be tabling or handing out flyers, and they call on their members to go and harass these people, to counter protest them, things like this. And this really just causes sometimes violence on our campuses. There really is no dialogue, no open dialogue, no tolerance between these groups. And that's one of the biggest issues that, speaking from my campus at Cal State Fullerton last semester, there were a lot of instances of these issues of people protesting against each other, spreading hate through social media, especially before the elections in November. It's a really big issue. So I think social media is a place where hate starts a lot of the time. And it's really a place where people can hide and criticize others without facing repercussions.
We're going to have to start winding this down, but I have another question I want to get to. And Chase, I see your hand. I'm going to have you, if you don't mind, when we finish this segment, I'll ask you to have some response or comments on it, if that works. If you want to say something now, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and wait. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, certainly. So, you know, we're Act Against Hate Alliance, and we're looking for solutions. So we've heard you talk about this, and I know some of you have been engaged in solutions by trying to create Act Against Hate Alliance chapters in your schools. Some of you are taking the message. So Mamie and I, through this vehicle, got Senator Josh Newman to carry a state resolution declaring January 28th the Stand Against Hate Action Day. And the idea is that every person takes some action and shares it with somebody. So you're not, just being quiet about it, but it can create a dialogue, give an opportunity for council members to speak up at council meetings or state legislators to speak up on their floor about hate, whichever form it takes. And there's a plethora of forms of hate that are out there. Certainly social media is sort of an incubator for it, because people can sort of post it and they feel like they're doing it anonymously. They're just looking at a computer screen, but it reaches so many different people. But I'd like, I know Ukars, you were involved at UC Berkeley in setting us up. Maybe you could, and you don't have it set up yet, but if you could just share a little bit of how you are going about it, what the difficulties may be, that kind of thing. Share us your experience real quick.
Sure. So I think, again, being on campus at Berkeley, we see a lot of this going on with the polarization and hate between student groups specifically. And so, what I and a bunch of other student leaders on campus have done is, we've not only gotten involved politically, but we've also created groups that are nonpartisan and not affiliated with any, certain ideology or group to try to bridge the gap between two or more groups. So even if we take politics, we partnered with, or we've created groups that are, nonpartisan, focused on issues that everyone can agree on. For example, we started a group that, focuses on human trafficking and solving that. And I think human trafficking is an issue that everyone can get behind, certainly. And so these kind of groups and issues that we talk about on campus really rally up the entire campus. It's not just one side or the other. And so I think these dialogues and these groups really help us bridge that gap and really show that, we are looking to solve problems in the community and have solutions. And not just talking behind a screen, or not just making certain comments behind a screen, but really engage in the community and working to find solutions together to make sure that we live together in a better world for everyone, regardless of who they are, where they come from, or what they believe in. And so we are every day, daily working to make sure that that remains a reality and that dialogue continues, regardless of what ideology you come from. And so I think we've had great success, and we have had a couple events that really bridge that gap politically and culturally speaking, and have made Berkeley, I think, a way better place than it was when I came in. And certainly it'll be much better for the people that come in and for years to come.
Awesome, thank you. Aiden, you've successfully got a resolution passed at the city level, I believe, and you've also been regarding the Standing at Hate Action Day, and you've also I know you've been working on that, and I'm pretty sure you got a chapter started in your high school. Can you talk about that very briefly?
Yeah, certainly. So I got a chapter of Act Against Hate started at Flint Ridge Prep. We're up to about 60 members right now that are signed up. And a good portion of them are very active. And the reason why they want to be active is because they recognize, like all of us students on this call, they've experienced the especially politically motivated hate that comes with their political beliefs. And often that is in the name of diversity, equity, and inclusion. That I cannot stress enough. That rhetoric has led to a lot of unforeseen hate. And so they sympathize with that. And I'm sure every student on this call can, but they feel these labels, and so they feel motivated to make a change. So what we've been doing is, on the student level, we've been lobbying cities to pass a version of SCR 15 on the local level. And I was successfully able to get that passed in the city council of San Gabriel 5-0. And we're also working to do the same thing on councils in the San Gabriel Valley and outside of the San Gabriel Valley, including Chinese American cities like Arcadia and San Marino, and white majority cities where I go to school like La Cañada and Pasadena. And we're working all throughout the LA County, and we're also working in Orange County with Irvine and Yorba Linda are some councils that I've also communicated with. So we're going through, all of the different steps that we need to do to make sure that cities, which is the vehicle where people are able to participate in government, people are much more able to communicate with their city council members and participate in city level governance. So that's where we're looking to impact change and work on, passing our resolutions.
Thank you. And we've already heard from Haley, who set up a club, not this particular club, but similar kind of purpose, right? Create a dialogue that helps lubricate the tensions and help things go better. Nicholas, you have done some work at Cal State Fullerton to try to set up a club, but you've also got on Walnut City Council tonight a resolution on the Stand Against Hate Action Day. Can you talk about that experience just a little bit? And tell us, was people receptive? Did you have obstacles? Tell us a little bit quickly how that all played out.
Well, initially I approached a council member about getting this resolution passed, and it got delayed over time. So I went to the city clerk's office after that. And once again, it was delayed because the resolution proclaims a date in January. So the city thought it would be best to have this on the agenda closer to January. However, we wanted to keep the momentum of this organization going and get this resolution passed as soon as possible. And start making people aware as soon as possible. The sooner the better. So we went up to the city manager's office and we were able to get it on the agenda. The resolution is on the agenda at tonight's city council meeting in Walnut. And one thing I wanted to mention is that local government is the level of government that's closest to the people. And it's really important as students and anyone in general needs to be familiar with their city council, their school board, and any other local forms of government that you might have in your area, because these are the people that know your community best, are most familiar and most involved when an act of hate occurs in a school or out in public somewhere. These are the first people that you are going to discuss these issues. And that's why it's really critical that you're familiar with them. And it's really important that this organization is contacting city councils across Southern California to get this resolution passed and make more people aware. And I think, it shouldn't just stop at the city council level. It should be at the educational level with various board of directors or school boards around the region as well. Excellent. Thank you, Nicholas. We're going to stretch our time a little bit. I hope you all can do that another 5 or 10 minutes maybe, but Remy, if you have any comments you want to say at this point, because I know you haven't been engaged and you're at a whole different level than many of these others, but that's not a bad thing. But maybe you can share your perspective about, how are you looking at as you enter a prestigious university? Are you fearful of that? What are you going to do to guard against being bullied and things like that? Anything you care to share on that?
Well, I have visited the Princeton campus once as a part of the preview, and I'm not really afraid of the community. I'm not worried about fitting in with the community there. They're very open, and it's probably one of the kindest communities I've ever become a part of. And I'm really grateful to be able to join it. But I feel like that is also because Princeton is, a research university. There's a lot of discussion, there's a lot of collaboration, and there is just a lot of openness there. And I feel like that's important in other communities as well. And I think that also starts with, as everybody else has pretty much said here, awareness. Raising awareness is a really important, foundation, because that is what that's what creates a need for discussion, for engagement, and a desire to make a change with things. And I feel like, at least at Princeton, that's already something there, and that should be, expanded to the rest of the country. And I feel like everything you guys are doing here at Act Against Hate Alliance is already a great foundation for creating a change. So
thank you for sharing that. I'm going to ask each of you just to share like one sentence or less what you would do in a perfect world to address hate crimes, hate incidents, bullying as quickly or most effectively as possible. We'll start with Utkarsh. You're the senior member here.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that compliment, Senator. I would say, in a perfect world, I think one thing that the pandemic taught me was to have more conversations in person and not just online. And so I think what I would have happen is, try to encourage and, in some cases, maybe enforce people to talk more in person, face to face instead of just online or texting, because I think that brings out a lot of the emotion and you get to see everyone in person. So that allows you to save and consider the things that you say, not hiding behind the screen all the time and just texting back and forth under, who knows what alias name. And so I think that really brings out the more genuine conversations I think we need in society today. And that can only be done in one setting that's in person. So I think that's what I would do.
Great, thank you. Haley?
In a perfect world, I would say allowing more thoughtful conversation in the school environment, especially like if we're in a class and a teacher's only teaching one point of view, that's never going to help us learn and expand our knowledge. So allowing kids to feel more comfortable and teachers to allow kids to feel comfortable, like not making them feel like they'll get a worse grade if they disagree with the teacher. So allowing like an atmosphere of discussion, which is really hard in today's society, but allowing that to happen is the best way for people to come together and find agreement. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Nicholas?
Well, I would say in a perfect world, we need to have an open dialogue. And, just because you disagree with someone doesn't necessarily mean they're evil. You should be able to talk to them, understand their point of view, express your point of view, and start at the local level, on your college campus, talk to the people that you know best, that are most familiar with the environment that you're in, and then work your way up and start making people aware at the local level and work your way up. I would say that's the most efficient way to do it. And that's the way you would do it in a perfect world.
Excellent. Thank you. Remy?
I would say in a perfect world, I would not only promote conversation, but also understanding. One of the most useful pieces of advice I received from one of my former teachers was to seek to understand before being understood. And with understanding, that allows you to, see that the other person in the discussion or the other people in the discussion have their own opinions, and they those other perspectives are important to creating a bigger picture of the entire situation. So I feel like with that bigger picture, it will become easier for you guys to work together to solve an issue rather than work against each other. So that's what I feel like.
Thank you, Remy. Aiden?
Yeah, I think in a perfect world, first of all, we wouldn't have the hate crimes that we have. But I think in order to fix that, it is a law and order issue. So I think law and order is very important in that prosecuting. But, in terms of what would really help, I think being Flag Day today, what we can look at is the values that unite us as a country. I think we need to focus on the 90% of values that we agree on, taking pride in our country and our flag and our God, but not letting the small things divide us. I think the values that we have that have created this country and have made us so great override any of the small petty arguments that we do have. And I think instead of resorting to name calling, instead of resorting to divisive rhetoric, instead of resorting to what we see on cable 24/7, I think what we need to do as students, as the next generation, what we need to do as a country is make sure that we take pride in us. I think we need to take pride in what we stand for as a nation. And I think we need to figure out that this country was not built on hate. This country was built on, independence and the fact that we were self-determined to do good as a nation and bring liberty to everyone. So I think it's important that we as the next generation bring that back, carry that mantle, and are able to continue to recognize that, yes, we do live in one of the freest and one of the greatest countries in the world. And I think it's very important that we do not hate on, what unites us, which is all being Americans.
Thank you, Aiden. That's an excellent summary from the students. Chase, I know you've been listening attentively. I can see your face there. You've been taking some notes. What are your comments or even question if you have for the kids?
Thank you, sir. I have been listening so attentively, and I want to say I am so heartened and inspired by everything that you all have said. Without exception, this has been a day full of brilliance. I really want to stand behind what everyone has said about the importance of inclusion and not allowing the ideas of diversity and inclusion to make us think that we're actually doing that, but the fact that we need to learn to listen to each other. And I think pretty much everyone said that in the closing remarks. It's all about listening to each other and seeking to understand. I would say it's important to realize that hate is based in fear, and that it's when we're afraid of each other on some level, afraid of our opinion or our stance not being recognized. It's when we're afraid of someone else's response overcoming what we truly believe, that we lash out, whether, as Utkarsh said, whether it's overturning a table, or whether, as Nicholas said, it's on social media, or Remy, whether it's at the lunch table. It's all the same. It's all based in fear. And so I believe what we need to do as a society is to teach children while they're young to really examine the reasons behind our feelings, and why are we afraid of each other? Why can we not understand that everyone has a right to their feelings and to their stance, and listen and understand each other? Father G, founder of Homeboy, said that you can't hate someone you know. And I'll close with this. If Crips and Bloods can share and understand and learn to love each other like brothers and sisters, then so can the rest of the world. It is an amazing example of people overcoming long-standing pain and difference and listening to each other, not necessarily agreeing on everything, but in fact, that will never happen, but coming to an understanding that we can work together to accomplish what we all really want, and that our similarities bind us and are much greater than our differences, and that we can get through the differences if we learn to listen to each other.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for your comments. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, students, for your incredibly insightful contribution, your dialogue. I wish we had had another hour to take. It really went by too quickly, but thank you so much. Appreciate it. To our media friends, we'll be emailing you a link to today's program, and we'll have the resources in there with Chase's, if she can release some of the slides or maybe the PowerPoint, then you would have access to the data that she presented. We hope today's program provided useful data to you and information you can share with your audiences. This program was made possible through a grant funding from the California State Library's Stop the Hate program. So watch your email inbox. You'll all get it, because when you join us any one time, we'll put you on the mailing list. But for our next event, we don't have it currently scheduled, but it will be likely sometime this summer. So keep an eye out for that. Thank you all for attending. Sorry to go over time. I just didn't feel like we could really wrap it up as quickly as we can. So
thank you, Senator Huff. Thank you, May. Thank you so much for opening the door for this conversation. Kudos to you and to you all.
Thank you, Chase.
Thank you to you all.
Thank you all.
Hey, Bob. Good.
Okay. Thank you again, May. I'll log off now, but I want to say how much I appreciate you having me here.
Thank you, Chase.
All right, be well. Bye.
Take care.